Huh?
Much. All right, the time is 6:15. I will call to order the March 18th meeting of the Huxley City Council. Roll call, please.
Roberts. Here. Etcher.
Here.
Rigler. Mulder.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Let the record show that Rigler is absent.
Thank you very much. This evening, we just have a work session planned regarding the 25-26 budget. Council members were provided budget information, a proposed budget a few days ago, and I've had some time to review that. I'll look to council a little bit as to how we'd like to go through this. There's not a significant amount of changes to this structurally or fundamentally from last year's budget. We can certainly go through as detailed of exercise as you'd like to. We can hit by department. Certainly, if you'd like input from department heads, happy to loop those folks in as well, or if you've just got questions for them. So I guess I'm looking to council here for a little bit of direction as to how in-depth your questions may be, or how much additional information you might be seeking this evening.
I would just like to note that in 2 weeks, we would like to meet with you all to go over the CIP, which will give you a little more input as to projects, equipment, those types of purchases where you got a lot of say and yes, no, more questions. So, but we'd like to.
I thought you did a really good job. I've been here a long time and this is very clear and easy to read. So thank you for that. There wasn't huge significant swings anywhere for me, so I don't know that I have a lot of in-depth questions for each department. It was explained where there were any increases noted. Looking at the cover page here. I don't know if others have more questions than I do, but I went through high level and didn't see anything that's stuck out.
Well, maybe let's do this, David. If you could start with just kind of an overview of the budget and any significant items or questions or issues that you need addressed by council.
Okay. As you'll note from the budget summary that Barb had put together on the key points, that the consolidated tax levy is going to remain the same for 25-26 as it did for 24-25. And I think that's been the same rate the city's had for, I mean, it's been a number of years that you've been at that 1168. The one thing, we put in a 4% increase. We just threw that as kind of a placeholder. That I think that's up to debate for you folks as to what you want to see. I will remind you that in 23, you had a 7% raise that went to staff, and I believe it was 5% last year. So that is something, if you folks want to make a change to that, you would need to let us know so we can kind of redo this, because anything with salary will again then won't cause changes to be made with all the taxes and all that sort of thing. So it's like we've said, you see the administrative salaries went up a little bit. Part of that is the fact that previously part of our salaries came out of road use. And as you recall, we did the program for the next 5 years where we're taking 100,000 out of TIF to cover some of Barb's time and my time, because of the amount of work that we put into the TIF stuff, that we just felt road use doesn't get a lot of increase every year. So we basically pulled all of our salary, the portion of our salary that was out of there out, and are using that $100,000 in the TIF increment program to fund so that's why you'll see the general administrative salaries are up. You'll see the road use salaries are kind of down, and that's the reason for that. Water salaries, the other thing, you see a small increase there. You had a longtime employee with Keith Vitzum that retired at the end of December. He was it's debatable, 27, 28-year employee. So, but Jay Kanks has taken his place, so there wasn't that salary was a little bit less than key. So it's kind of on the salary side, that's kind of the, you know, the main parts. Revenue wise, TIF revenue increased due to some additional TIF debt certification. Other city taxes increased due to projected increase on franchise fees and local option projections. Charges for fees and services increased due to increases in water sewer charges. As a reminder you, we're in the process of having Chip review those rates for going forward for subsequent years that will be upcoming. We did receive quite a bit more interest this year than in previous years. We moved money to iPay, which was paying a really good dividend. We just recently moved everything back to South Story. They actually gave us a better rate than what we could get from iPay. So for the time being, our money is back locally. I know they've worked hard to try to get that back, and Barb was very forthtelling and stubborn and saying that if you want our money back, you need to give us a better rate than what iPaid is, and they finally did. So that's the reason those revenues are up. Expenditure wise, you'll see there wasn't a lot of increase in public safety. The fire and ambulance budgets are the budgets that we made no changes to those. Those were the ones that were presented to us. Public Works, again, was a decrease due to the shifting salary and bennies that were noted above. Increase on the general government, we kind of talked about that. The business type, I think that's a piece that there was some principal due on the sewer SRF, so there was a large increase there. Like I said, we don't have capital expenditures figured into this yet. That's why we'd like to meet in a couple of weeks to kind of talk about CIP and get your take on there. And from there, be happy to answer any questions. I know staff, I've noticed over the last several years, they come in, Public Works, all of them, they all, streets, police, Heather and them, they're not asking for huge increases in anything. They know that dollars are tight, and they try to do the best they can with the dollars that they're allocated. So I'd applaud them, and I'd applaud Barb for getting everything put together in this format, which I think is easier for everybody to see than maybe what we've had in previous years and prior to even my coming. So
Can someone refresh my memory? Do we get, I don't remember now when we do insurance costs. Is that June? Is that November? I don't remember when they came the last time.
for
Health insurance.
We meet the 16th of April to
So
discuss
it's coming
that.
up, okay.
Right now, they're telling us no increase.
Okay.
They will probably increase their fees to us, but as far as the health insurance goes, there's no increase, but we did budget a small increase just to be on the safe side.
That's good news, and we were trending up for a while, but I think that's leveled off. So that just, I'm asking because I'm thinking about the 4% and then how that looks overall. So, thanks.
Yeah, the Midwest CPI was right around 3.8% or so. So 4% seems consistent with what I've seen across industries for this last year. So I'm comfortable with that. I'd ask John, you're the CPA in the group, and what's your review look like of that? Do you have any comments? I rely on your expertise.
Yeah, as far as wages go, 4% I think is a little high. Especially for the area here, with what's going on. And I understand it's difficult because depending on who you talk to out there, everybody's got a different aspect on the economy. So I look at the wage aspect. I can live with 4. It's not the end of the world. Might be a hair bit high, but I can live with it. CIP, is there any tax dollars coming in from CIP, or how are we funding CIP?
most of our CIP, we've taken the local option tax dollars as a requirement. The city, when I got here, the city wasn't able to show how they were providing 80% of their local option tax going for property tax relief. So that's we started putting those dollars into some equipment revolving funds that can be used for projects and equipment. And you'll see that within the local option, you'll kind of see what we've transferred. We're trying to start putting money aside for police cars, fire trucks, street projects, those sorts of things. That's how we're looking to fund most of that. When equipment is sold in departments, we're allowing those dollars to go back into those departments to fund future equipment. The only tax dollars that, new tax dollars on debt service will be for the public works facility, depending on whether we do a GO or TIF. But the hope is to be able to pay a combination of the two if we get the GO. So.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I assume that that's where it was coming from, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't looking at one budget here and then getting something that dealt with the same dollars 2 weeks from now and looking at it.
Yeah, no, I think when you see when you see the CIP, we actually kind of, Barb and I sit down and met with the different departments. We talked about kind of their needs and we looked at how we would kind of divvy up, because we had almost 2 years worth of local option tax that we hadn't spent. So we've kind of moved that around and then we've kind of planned for this upcoming year where we're going to put dollars to. And I think you'll see that when you see the CIP of things that, we've asked them to prioritize, what are the most important, whether it's a piece of equipment or a project, prioritize that and see how we fund them now within, with water and sewer, they typically can fund their own, pieces of equipment and projects through their rates. But for everybody else, we're utilizing local option tax dollars.
And you'll see that in the CIP because the CIP will tell you the project, the cost, and where the dollars are coming from to pay for that.
Couple other questions I have real quick and then I'll pass it on. Public safety. As we keep increasing population in this town with build new homes, what's our plan for increasing law enforcement, ambulance service, that type of aspect? I know if I was looking at a place for business, whatever in general, access to them services are critical. I don't seem to think, just the drive from Mary Greeley to here is not a very quick drive. And if I'm needing an ambulance service, I don't want to wait a half an hour or better for an ambulance to show up. So I guess to me, we're keeping our public safety flat. My concern is the town's growing and this is staying flat. Do we have a plan for how we're gonna unflatten that going forward?
So I asked both Dave and Barb to reach out to other agencies within the county. And I believe they've reached out to the Story County and we're looking at something like that. But we're also looking at right now, I wanted to bring this up and I'll bring it up now. We're funding $100,000. We dropped that down to $70,000, $80,000 a year for an ambulance service that only one person on the ambulance service is qualified to do ALS. The ambulance service revenue, they say they're bringing in 65 to 75,000 a year. And since 21, it's 52,000, 41,000, 42,000, 58,000, well below that. So you're right. If we're going to provide services, we need to decide what we're going to do. But I don't think that's totally up to the community of Huxley. I think we need to reach out to other communities. If we're going to provide this service and possibly the county, in ways we can do that feasibly.
I could agree with what you have to say fully. I just think we need to have a plan. If our plan is to have no plan, it's not a real good plan.
John, I would say, I've been talking with a number of folks, and they don't want to get too far out in the weeds, but I think we all see the folks that I've talked to, we've seen the need and these are folks that don't live here. These are folks in other communities and other agencies. And we've had kind of a small strategic talk of, how do we, make this work for the whole county? There's a lot of us here in southern Story County that don't have the best coverage. We know that we're growing. We know that within, the next, if you recall from CHIPS, we pegged the payback on the street barn for 5 years. And that really drops off in year 4 and 5 on the debt service levy. And I think that that's the time that we start planning that if we're going to build a new fire, we need to start thinking where we're going to go. But in that time period, in the next 2 to 3 years, I think we have to start planning for it. So when that debt service levy goes, and then we're ready to do that. And you'll see that from the local option tax too, is we're putting almost $500,000 into fire between the last 2 years and next year to start planning for equipment. We're putting in some significant dollars on the ambulance side, but I think it's going to be, there are going to be a number of discussions that are going to have to take place. We've talked about, do we go visit with the supervisors? Do we, talk to the 2 services that are here? How do we work together to provide the best service? And that's what it's going to take. And I think I've worked with Brenda at the Alliance, and she helped kind of set up one of the meetings, and we talked how we might strategize to bring the other party in and have those discussions. I was really hoping here, a couple of weeks ago, there was talk of the state mandating that the counties make EMS an essential service, not that you can tax for it, but you will fund it. And then it kind of got dropped back in committee because it's like, well, how's that gonna, be done when we're trying to, cut local property taxes? So I haven't seen much movement on that since, but no, we are looking at, how can we continue to provide service in this community as we grow, and we know, it's just the number of homes that are going to take place in the next 5 to 10 years and growth in the community that's coming.
Well, I just look at the number of homes that's grown in
Yeah.
the last couple of years, and we don't tend to increase our services at all. We keep flat. But yet we're trying to take care of more and more people. Well, that to me just doesn't add up.
I mean, I would look, since 2015, there have been about 400 and it's either 450 or 480 single family homes that have been built since 2015. The last couple of years, 23 and 24 were probably a little down from previous years. I think you guys had a big boom prior to that, but that could take off again. I know Barb looked at some numbers, and I'll let her talk about, because she was looking, how might we fund another police officer? So I'll let her kind of speak to what she's seen to this point and kind of go from there. I've been more focused on fire and the EMS moving forward. So,
But what we got to realize now is that we are paying for a service, a premium service that we're not qualified to give that service. Because we have one person on our department now that can do the ALS. It's like if you have a heart attack, we can't transport, because that heart attack is going to need medicine given at the time. And we cannot do that with just one person on the department.
I
So-
understand there's only one person on the department, but again, we don't have a plan.
Yeah, that's what we're just talking about, John. We were just
Okay,
talking
what
about
is
that.
the plan? Your plan is, well, it doesn't work. Well, that's not a good.
So
plan.
what's your plan? Just pump money into it?
The plan is to sit down and come up with a plan. That's what we got a work session.
Oh,
for.
That's
Is to
not,
come up with some
that's
ideas.
probably not in this work session. This is
This is a budget work session, and that would be a budget item.
well,
So, yes. I would say it's very well within the realm to ask these questions in a budget session.
I agree. And that's why I'm asking the questions, why we're still funding this when we're not able to give the service that we're saying we're providing.
I think the citizens of Huxley would be rather shocked to know that that we're looking at basically eliminating the service that they think's here. And I think if I walked around town, probably 8 out of 10 people would assume we had.
Would you also tell those 8 out of 10 people, John, that we're not providing them the service that they should be getting? Because you cannot transport without the qualified person?
And I think in order to have.
Are you going to tell them that, John?
I could talk to them about it.
Cause you could talk to them, well, you can tell them we're not paying for it.
Tell them anything that I'm not 100% sure what's going on with it.
Cause you can tell them that we're not giving them the service because of the money, but you're also not gonna tell them that we're not gonna give them the service because we can't give them the service. Cause we're not qualified to give them the service.
So maybe we need to have that discussion about being qualified to give people service.
I agree with you totally there, John, and we agree on that. And I think that we need to work with other agencies to provide a service in this whole area, the southwest area of the county. Because why did Slater tell us they no longer want us to even respond?
I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know.
So I don't either.
But
But
if-
you were at the meeting with the fire department when they said, Slater told us effective December, we no longer want you to respond. You were at that meeting.
Yeah, but I don't know the ins and outs
So-
of what was there.
Okay.
I was not in the meeting or what. went
So
on.
let's work on developing a system that can provide service for the whole part of this county.
I'd agree with that, and that's part of the budget discussion here, because it's gonna take revenue to make some of these things happen.
But I don't believe that the city of Huxley should be paying for services that we can't provide. That's my opinion.
And that's a fine opinion, you're more than welcome to your own opinion.
Okay, let's circle back to the first topic, which was salary that was brought up. What's included currently is a 4% increase. We have not done a salary study. I think we had budgeted some dollars last year. I'm looking down at staff, they're nodding their head. That has not yet occurred. Do we anticipate a salary study this year, or does council desire to have a salary study done? Maybe I'll start with there. It's been a bit.
Yeah, I think we should, like, I'm even thinking in my mind, not knowing, what's the difference between a 3% and a 4%? And then with that extra percent, do we have money for ambulance or for where else would that, maybe it's not even enough that I need to be worried about it, but.
What does 1% of salary equal in dollars? Do you have a rough?
Cause everybody's funded at different pots, right? And
Correct, it's a
percentages, so
whole
it's not,
thing.
but general fund is what I'm thinking. Is that just
Right,
admin?
and I think when I plugged those numbers in, it was right around, I want to say it was like $1,000 saving. Does that I don't even think it was a $2,000 savings to go from 4% to 3%.
General.
More than-
Gotta be.
No, I meant as far as what it would increase the general fund.
Well, if you're taking a percent of salary, I don't know what we have in salaries, but
I guess, let's say.
I would guess somewhere around there.
PD.
Yeah. And say 25 and fire.
I think that's a good question. What is dollars that we're talking? If things are as tight as we're talking.
I'm
And
gonna
I
be
can
the bad
run- I
guy
can
here,
run
because
back
we
or-
always went back
those
to
figures.
data. That, it's like you said, do a study, what is the other cities our comparison are getting for raises and so forth?
For the most part, staying from all the salary discussions, but in my 20 years at the DOT, kind of a salary study was done about every 10 years in a government, I don't know when the last time we were here. That's my only comments on that, is I don't know when the last time it was done, but I don't know what I guess is that.
I want to say it was 6-7 years ago. It was
Was that
Mark,
about when, was that about when Marquita did it? It was before my time.
something in that ballpark. So 7, maybe somewhere in that ballpark.
I'm not totally opposed to 4%, because it's like, especially if it's not gonna increase our budget that much, but, yeah. I'm not opposed to it, but I think at some point we do need to do a study.
Dave, are there still dollars available to do a salary study, or would we need to include that in this budget if council so desired?
We've got money within the current budget that we could do that if you choose to move forward. It's just, do you know who Urbandale's used in the past?
I can't tell you the name of them off the top of my head, but I could certainly get that information.
I know a couple that I don't want to work with, but yeah, I'd be interested and I can reach out on the city manager listserv and see, who's had a recent one and if they've had, good results out of it or
Yeah.
not.
And so there's kind of two approaches to the timing of all this. Clearly, we're not going to get a salary study done between now and July 1st. That's not realistic. They take some amount of time. So my recommendation to council would be to move forward with a percentage to include in this budget. Whatever we come up with, 3, 4, whatever percent that might be. And then time the salary study such that the results might be current and accurate as of February or March of 26. I think there's some logic to that. So I'm not seeing anybody in disagreement, Dave. So if you could take that as some direction. Okay. So again, just focusing on, well, I'll wait for Barb's input.
Barb to
Yep.
come back and get
Yep.
some data.
Yep.
In your salaries line, just to clarify, that's. I was looking at it here. That covers your IPERS, all your taxes, all your insurance, everything included. Sure.
Well, within, you'll have, your salaries covers your overtime, all your taxes, insurance, work comp. Even uniforms fall under that salary.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure, because when people talk wages, sometimes they talk different pots, and I just wanted to make sure we was all on the same page here.
While we're waiting, does anyone know, or have we heard the lack of qualification for the ambulance, being able to use that? Is that something we haven't been able to attract the right amount of talent or certified or qualified talent? Is that because we're paying at a too low rate, or does anyone know any more history or data on that?
I'll just tell you that to fund a paramedic today, you're gonna spend minimum 28 to 34, 35 an hour plus bennies. For a full-time, I'm talking full-time paramedic, or even a part-time that's gonna come work. And it comes down to transports. I mean, transports are where you make your money to kind of help offset this. In West Liberty, I thought we weren't doing enough transports, and they were bringing in 240,000 a year, and they wanted, 3 full-time paramedics. Fire chief wanted paramedics around the clock 24/7, which just didn't pan out. You look at Eldora, they do a lot of transports because of their location. They have 7 or 8 full-time paramedics on staff, but they bring in almost $700,000 a year in transports. And when we're bringing in 40,000, it's difficult to get enough qualified people to be able to come offer that service. That's why I think that we've got to think a little bit outside the box and look, how do we partner with different groups to put this together? Because I see us having the location, hopefully a new station. We've got the equipment, we're going to be putting money for new equipment going forward, but it's having the money to pay the people that have those skills to be able to run that on those transports. But again, too, I mean, you've got to just look at the numbers. I think
Is that
We need
numbers
to
game
look at-
though, a cart and a horse? I mean,
look
if
at.
you don't have the people, you're not gonna have the numbers. Did we have the right administration,
it's
administrating the people?
Part of it is,
I
just
mean-
the calls that you get, what calls do you get that you transport? Because there are a certain group of people that are always going to call Mary Greeley. That's who I want. And that's a right that any patient has, or I want Story County ambulance to come.
In West Liberty though, was it paid, were they paid full-time positions?
We had one full-time paid, one part-time paid, and we had two, I take that back. We had two full-time paramedics. We had a part-time paramedic and we had two EMTs that were on staff full-time.
So I would just say that, like, so my best friend Tanya is the one who's certified in counseling. She's the only one, and I know they have a ton of people on EMS and fire. There's just nobody else that's certified. And she gets paid what, $12 a call or something like, it's, so they're not, and she would, I know for a fact, she would love to be a full-time fire EMS. But that's just never been an option.
But we currently have a volunteer
Right.
fire department and ambulance service.
Yeah,
Now, if we're gonna change that, I have no problem with this, but we gotta figure out how we're gonna fund that at this time.
And there just aren't people in
Yeah,
the community that are certified.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not against an ambulance service for the community. I think it would be very valuable for this area, for not only our community, but for the surrounding communities. But we got to figure out how we're going to do it and that we're not losing money on it. That's my belief on it. And I think there's other ways we can look at, but it's not going to be today's session of the budget.
it's gonna take a little bit of time talking to the different entities that are involved in this that I think could play a part. And, and I think we all have to, we're gonna have to come to the table and have some tough discussions with ourselves and with some of these other entities. But, I felt pretty good after my initial visit with one gentleman that I visited with, and, he's all for, what can we do to make this better? But it is gonna take, it's gonna take a little time. It's not gonna happen overnight. It's probably something in the next 2 to 3 years that it's gonna take, even if you were hitting it full speed today, it's gonna take you that long to get it, because there are a lot of moving parts to get it to work, to make sure you've got the contracts in place and the people, and just,
Well, it needs to be a plan that needs to get started so you can get that plan going down the road. And I understand it isn't gonna happen overnight.
and we're working towards it.
Okay, so a decrease to 3% would give us an additional $10,000 in the general fund.
And then a few other dollars in road use and water and probably some
Yeah.
other.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't have enough zeros in my head.
You only missed by 1-0.
Dave, back to your West Liberty comment. So was that a money-making situation then, or is it, it's
No,
never, you're never
no,
gonna
it
make money,
was-
so I just want to
No,
make sure everybody,
it was one of those things that you
no, I don't think you should. but I'm just saying.
you won't make money on it.
Yeah.
It's just,
Unless you're Polk County in the casino, you're not
Yeah.
in business to make money.
I know Story County Ambulance loses money every year. I'm sure Mary Greeley does too, and there's somebody subsidizing them,
So
but
when I worked in Ames, Mary Greeley, I was there quite a bit. Mary Greeley transported to Des Moines, they transported to Minnesota and stuff. They make money on that. But if we're gonna have an ambulance service here with one ambulance, we cannot do that, because if our ambulance is out of the community doing transport that's gonna make big money, it's not here in the community. So we gotta figure out how we're gonna keep that ambulance in the community and also supply the service we need. So again, I think by expanding it is what we need to do. And Dave's working on it, John. So,
I think I have every right to ask some questions there, Rory. And
Yeah.
if you're unhappy that I ask questions.
I'm not unhappy. It's just like
Yes,
you.
are. You're very condescending down there, and I don't. Whatever,
That was con.
that was condescending.
All right, we'll move along here. Appreciate everybody's input. So circling back to salary, the difference between 3-4% is approximately 10,000 to the general fund. Does not seem to be a significant dollar amount. So is 4% an agreeable number to plug into the budget?
I'm good with it.
Rory, Tracy, Ms. Roberts?
Yeah, it doesn't make it a significant amount. It's just that we were 7 and then 5 and now we're 4 and yeah, that's fine.
Mr. I appreciate you abstaining, Mr. Mulder, for good cause. Mr. Murphy?
I think due to the nature, 10,000's not real relevant in the grand scheme of things. I'm okay with 4.
Thank you very much for your input. Staff's got some direction on that piece of it.
And we've got the input on the salary study to get that done. So we've got good data when we come into budget next year.
That's perfect, perfect. Okay. Ambulance has been certainly a discussion topic this evening. I trust that we'll continue having those conversations. I don't see any significant changes to the proposed budget that are going to probably occur regarding the ambulance.
And I'd like
At
to
this
add the
point.
police in there also somewhere in the future.
Sure, public safety.
Public safety is a general.
Bigger,
I think we need
yeah.
to look at how we're gonna fund more officers. I do know currently when somebody gets sick or something happens, it becomes a pretty big stress on the department. And I'm afraid that when you have them stressors, people finally break and they leave and we lose good people. And then we're behind the 8 ball again. And I don't want to get to that position.
Sure, and there's actually, we're showing a budget surplus of 159,000 for our proposed 26 budget. That would be enough to fund a police officer, but beyond fiscal year 26, right now there's additional proposed property tax legislation. And in the legislature, everything is so uncertain. We know we could do it for 1 year. Is that what we want to do?
I would say probably, again, I've asked for it several times, a study of comparisons to our community size and so forth.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that.
Appreciate that. One thing I will address, and I had asked Barb, and she did a wonderful job of putting this together. We always see kind of a 1 year, 2 year look back on your table this evening as a loose copy it's kind of a 4 year look back. So it starts in 21 and goes to 26. I think it's important to see kind of historical trends. And it's not like we haven't been increasing funding for public safety. Obviously, as population has increased, our commitment and dollars spent on public safety have increased as well. If you look at police, fire, and ambulance since 21, our net spending has increased about 23% for public safety. So we certainly have not stayed flat. We've certainly made some investments. More investments could be made for sure. But I just wanted to highlight that piece of information that Barb was kind enough to put together for me at the last minute. Having said that, we've talked about salary. We've touched on public safety. Are there any additional topics, Mr. Mulder?
Yeah, I just wanted to, maybe this is the right time to bring it up, maybe it's not, but I see the revenues for the Cambridge Police Service and they're remaining pretty steady. I know we've had conversations over when we're signing the Cambridge contract. What percentage of that should they be paying? Should they be paying a little bit more, a little less based on population size or different things like that? I know each year we're down to signing that contract with them. Is there any room for negotiations, discussions? Should we approach that contract with Cambridge for their services slightly differently? I want to rather prepare for it further in advance until right when that contract is ready to be renewed.
Got it. All right, here we go. Thanks. As far as the contract goes, and the amount spent or gathered or however you want to call it, that's between Barb and the city administrator or the city clerk of Cambridge. What I will say about the city of Cambridge is that they are not a drain on us whatsoever. I feel like this is a good deal for Huxley rather than Cambridge. I hate to say that on a record, but it's not. Cambridge is not getting ripped off. I will not say that. But they're a very, very easy town to get along with. very easy town to work for. Their demands are extremely reasonable. I can't say a bad word about that town. This contract to me is very, very fair as far as what they're paying and what we're giving them. I don't want to see too many, I don't want to price them out. I'd hate to lose this contract. That'd be, damaging. So I would say the contract as is very satisfactory to me as a department head.
Nate, would you say it also allows us to have that additional officer, correct?
Right, yeah. So they fund, let's say, maybe 65K or somewhere around there, whatever the rough number would be. And the typical officers probably cost around maybe 100 to 110K, something like that. So yeah, they do, significant towards an officer, not the whole thing. I get that part, but yeah, it's pretty much the idea was they're funding a heck of a lot of one officer.
Nate, while you're up here, our school resource officer, have we negotiated a preset increase with that, or what's that look like?
I think we did, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so they're always gonna be at 75% of one officer's salary plus, benefits and cost of subscriptions to certain whatever. So,
Any additional questions for Chief Albaugh?
No, just I would support too, the leaving it as is for the Cambridge contract.
All right, thanks. It's a good conversation. Thank you very much. Any additional topics, questions, concerns?
I'd like Kathy to speak. We talked today about the contract with the school because it's gone, if you look on your budget, we actually took in 52,000 in fiscal year 22 and then went down to 30,000 in 23. It's going up slightly, but we're not even at 40,000 right now for that contract. So I talked to Kathy about it and I'd like her to speak a little bit about why that is.
I don't know if you remember when that dropped, that was when Rita was here and she wanted to renegotiate. Essentially, her goal was to back out of it completely, is why it went down. And then the 2080 was renegotiated, re-signed, and so now we have that yearly increase. So the increase is minimal each year. But yeah, that's what Barb asked me about this afternoon, and that's the history of it.
Taking politics out of this, are there any changes at the State House that might affect that contract moving forward?
Not with the school. The laws that they passed regarding the school libraries are said and done, and we've complied with that. What's on the table right now has to do with public libraries.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
I know that was kind of a consideration or a talking point at one point years
Yeah.
ago, so appreciate that clarification.
So is you're thinking that the school would, if we're asking more, would contribute more?
I have no idea if they would or not. The current contract allows for an increase each year
Who decides that? The board?
between the school board and yeah, it's between the city of Huxley and the school district. And the contract stays as is until someone questions it, and that has to be done 6 months prior to the expiration of the contract. And that's either if you want to make a change or either party wants to back out.
Thank you.
Okay. Last opportunity at this work session anyway for any budget questions. Not seeing any, so staff, I think you've got some direction for a few items. We will continue to talk about our public safety aspect. That subject's not going to be dropped. There's no desire to drop it. It's a challenging one to be sure. So I know Fire Chief had a conflict this evening. I know he would have loved to have been here to provide his input. And we'll certainly get that input here in the future. He's obviously a significant part of that conversation. So I look forward to hearing from him as well. With that,
Just a reminder, you'll get your notice. Next Tuesday, we meet at 5:30 for the budget levy hearing. When it's done, we have to wait till 6, have our regular meeting. And I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but the work session for the CIP will take place on April 1st. So that is the first Tuesday and we meet on the 8th. So
It's appropriate.
we would look for the first, kind of plan on April 1st at 6 o'clock. And we'll get notices out for that, but we can present the CIP and kind of go through that and answer questions and kind of show you where we're thinking that we need to go this next year and how we're going to fund it. Like I said, most of that's coming from local option tax dollars, other than the bond proceeds that'll take place later this year for the Public Works Building.
Okay, our next meeting is March 25th at 5:30 PM, followed by a 6 PM meeting. With that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Etcher, second by Ms. Roberts. All those in favor, please respond with aye.
All right.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.